I appreciate what you said earlier too about one step at a time. Right now, there are like so many initiatives, so many things we're supposed to teach with fidelity, so many things like adding self-care to our to-do list. Like, no, just one little step at a time. What's one little thing you can do tomorrow to move toward your own goals? And if you do that every day this year, remarkable things are going to happen.
All right, welcome to yet another episode of the Empowerment Perspective Podcast. I go by the name of Dr. Damiso A, Josey, and like always, we are about bringing you useful information, but this one specifically is for you educators out there, your teachers. Beginning of the school year is here. Hopefully your school years are going well and people are adjusted back to, I guess I could say, the new normal and, dealing with this COVID stuff. So I was, of course, back in my favorite place in Lincoln. On LinkedIn, and was just looking for some useful information, and I stumbled upon somebody that I think has some great information for you educators out there. So she's a principal. I believe she did some speaking. I saw a TEDx on her one time. We're going to dive into that as well. But she wrote a book, and we'll get to that book as well. Allyson, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so glad to be here with you. Thank you for having me.
No problem. So we're going to dive into, always ask why you got into education, because I think it's a good story to begin this podcast off with, and kind of and maybe inspire somebody who's actually thinking about possibly getting into education and maybe into administration. Kind of tell us your story and why you decided to get into education.
I love that you start the podcast off with this, because I think especially now it's so important to reconnect to why we got into this business in the first place. Because we've had a couple challenging years, and not that the other years are easy, but there's been, as we all know, unique challenges over the past couple of years. But I graduated from high school saying, I don't know what I want to be, but I know I don't want to be a teacher, because I never want to step foot in there again as I walked out the doors. And I didn't know what else to do. So I studied business and went to our local community college. And my psychology class was canceled, and I had to fill it with something that would meet the same requirement and fit into my schedule at the beginning of my sophomore year of college. So I ended up picking up educational psychology. And I remember the professor said, how many of you want to be teachers? And everybody in the class, they all raised their hands except for me. And I was looking around like, that's the last thing I think I want to be. But I had to do the volunteer work anyway. And I went into my aunt's first grade classroom. And I looked at those faces. And honestly, the thought that went through my mind is, oh my gosh, you have 12 years of torture ahead of you, where like this joy for learning and this zest for school that you have will be like sucked out of you over the course of your elementary into secondary career. And that's where I found my calling. Because I thought, oh, you sweet kids, not on my watch is that going to happen. So as I work with educators this fall, I have been asking them to sum up their why in 6 words or less. And my why is 4 words, not on my watch. I want every student to feel valued and seen. And then in my work as a leader, every staff member, every teacher to feel valued and seen and known.
Perfect. Before we get to the whole teacher approach, because I love that concept, the transition from like why an educational leader, like what clicked at you at that point when you was like, all right, well, I think I want to give this leadership thing a try.
Well, somebody asked me. I became a leader when I was 27. And I probably should not have been a leader at that point, because I had a lot of growing up yet to do. But I was the most experienced in the particular philosophy in the school, and things had been going pretty well for me. And I was working to support my colleagues. And so I think it was a natural transition for me. Really, it's for me, it's about trying to make a difference in the life of others. And that led me to the classroom, that led me to being a leader, and now the work I do in traveling the country.
Perfect. So let's dive into the book a little bit. And I found it interesting because we talk in education, we talk about the whole child, and we talk about educating the whole child. And it never really even dawned on me to think about the whole educator and really, really leading the whole educator. Can you break down what does that mean specifically?
Yeah, so I've done a lot of research, and it's observational research or conversational research, or like throwing a blog post out there or a tweet and seeing what sticks, what doesn't, what feedback I get, and then also the scholarly research that we do as we're developing a concept. But you know, principals become principals often because they're really great teachers. They're really good at leading children. And it's a whole different artwork. The work is so different to be a leader of adults.
Mm-hmm.
And I've worked with principals who just dread PD days or dread staff meetings because that's not in their wheelhouse. They don't feel comfortable with that. And so I think we have to be really intentional on becoming solid leaders of adults.
Mm-hmm.
To be empathetic and supportive and help the adults in our building feel whole and seen and known.
Right. Oftentimes, like again, I keep relating to the students. We think about that these students are bringing in all this information and I'm going to use the word baggage, but their personalities and the things, their experiences into the classroom. And we, as educational leaders, and I'm glad you said art because I do think it is an art form to be an educational leader. But you have these people, these adults, and bringing in these same things from the outside, and we have as educator leaders, we have to figure out how to be supportive of that, right? And we have to be able to give them not only professional development in terms of how to teach, but also, some mental health. It could be part of mental health. It could be a part of, this social emotional learning for educators too.
Exactly. It's interesting that you mentioned that because we adopted, in my last principalship, we adopted Leah Kuyper's zones of regulation. Mm-hmm. And that's a powerful tool for students, but it almost was more powerful for adults. Mm-hmm. They would be walking into the teacher's lounge like, hey, everybody, I'm on yellow. I just want you to know that's where I am. And that just increasing that level of self-awareness and then understanding the impact of our behavior on others, like that's not natural always for adults either.
Right. So what's the title of the book, and kind of, I guess, walk us through what you talk about in the book? You don't have to give away all of it because it's my book, but give them the commercial version of it.
So this is actually my 5th book, and it's called Leading the Whole Teacher, Strategies for Supporting the Educators in Your School. And it's really framed around 6 pillars of the whole teacher. And those were developed over the course of many years, and all that research that I talked about in my 19 years as an educational leader, my experiences as a teacher. So the 6 pillars are valued educator, emotional safety, continuous learning or professional growth, decision maker, I'm going to forget one, emotional safety, and positive relationships. And when I share those 6 pillars with staff members, with teachers, because this encompasses all staff, not just teachers, it's like this sigh of relief. Like, yeah, if I went into school and I felt valued and I got to grow in the way I wanted to grow, and I had positive relationships, and there was an emotional safety, and I had a seat at the decision-making table, and I think I forgot, healthy workload. If all of those things were in place, yeah, I would feel whole and well and set to thrive. So I knew that those 6 hit the nail on the head.
Absolutely. In all forms of education, I think the major part is relationship building. Mm-hmm. And then with my staff, what I try to do, I call it the adventure club. So once a month, we pick an adventure that's outside of school that we've never done before. And we kind of meet and we'll do those adventures. Started with like the escape room, and then we did some other things. I went to gun range one time and went to games, and it just started building that relationship with the staff. One, they can see me as a human being and not just the suit and tie that they see all day long. But two, also, once I've developed that relationship, when it's time to have difficult conversations with staff members, it's a little bit easier to digest because I've built this relationship with them. So all you educator leaders out there, you can steal that one. I put that one on the house. You can take this and do that. It's gotten to the point because I've been in multiple districts now. Every teacher say you should just do one for everybody. So I'm kind of getting this idea of bringing teachers together through this concept of
I love that
club type thing. So relationship building is huge, and having an open door policy I think is huge. My staff knows if my door is open, they're welcome to come in, and then they tell me stuff, whether it's personal things and how they feel that day. And my job is to figure out how can I make you the best educator in that moment, despite whatever you're going through. Absolutely. So however I can be supportive or give you the resources to do that, I think it's important. And I think a lot of educational leaders are missing that, are not taking the time to really invest in that part of leadership with their staff. I think your book is spot on in the things that you're trying to do.
And what you're speaking to is a trusting environment. Mm-hmm. In so many schools I work with or educators I work with, it feels like a us versus them. Mm. And when you have those specific practices, systemic changes, those practices in place, it feels more like a trusting team where we can rely on each other and we're all moving in the same direction. Because really, ultimately, we are. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't feel like that sometimes.
Right. And you mentioned like the workload piece too. I think it's important for us as educational leaders. I won't ask my staff to do anything that I won't do myself. So I try to model that for them. And if it means, they need a couple extra minutes on their prep so I can come teach their class, then guess what? I'll be in there teaching your class, and I'm not going to give you anything that I wouldn't do myself. And then developing a professional development plan with them so that they can grow in the areas that they see fit. I kind of let them decide what area that they want. I mean, obviously we have district things that we have to do, but there's also space for individual professional development as well. But having those conversations with them, and again, knowing who your staff is going to lead you into that space. Right.
And when we talk about the healthy workload, it's not just the workload. Teachers kept pushing back on me and saying it's the worry load also. Mm-hmm. And the number of things that they feel like are piled on their shoulders on top of their worry about their students and their own family situation. And just really looking at how can we reduce that worry load for teachers also.
I think a big piece of that too is going back to the why, explaining why we need to do this particular thing, and not just check a box or whatever the case may be. Once they understand why we are doing it and the benefits of doing what I'm asking them to do, I think that lessens the worry factor of it as well. And at the end of the day, I tell them all the time, like, this is important, but in the grand scheme of things, it's really not that important. Like, you're going to come in here to them tomorrow and teach anyway, right? I think it's important, but I'm not putting that pressure on you.
Keeping things in perspective is so valuable. Right.
And you don't have to master it right now. It's process, right? Yes. So I think I need to, relax. We're going to roll this out, nice and slow so that you can digest it, which is important.
Yes.
Let's get into, you said you wrote, this is your 5th book, right?
It is, yes.
And what were some of your other books that you were writing?
Yeah, so I started off in 2015. I started a blog called Serendipity in Education, and there's hundreds of blog posts on there now. So lots of free content and many of the things that I talk about in the book. But that led to my first book, which is called The Path to Serendipity. So it really, my fascination with serendipity started with the 2000 movie. I think it's 2000 or 2001. It's called Serendipity, starring John Cusack and Kate Beckinsale. And serendipity means happy accidents. But I really believe that if we go through life looking for happy accidents and beautiful lessons and all the things we experience, that we can live a more effective and more fulfilled life. So that's my serendipity thing. And the first 4 books were the Path to Serendipity, which is a professional development book, really like kind of self-discovery And then through the lens of serendipity, helping others discover the best in themselves is like taking those ideas and turning them on the world around us and how we can support students and staff and colleagues. And then I wrote 2 books for children. One is a picture book called The Princes of Serendip, which tells the origin of the word serendipity. It's a 16th century Persian tale that I rewrote. And Molly Blaisdell did a beautiful job illustrating it. And then the other book is called The Serendipity Journal, and that's a middle grade realistic fiction chapter book, which takes many of the relationship building, understanding the motivation behind our own behavior, really understanding what is within our control and what's not, takes those concepts and puts them in, I think, I hope, a very interesting realistic fiction story that 4th through 6th graders can really relate to.
Right. I feel like the Serendipity, the first one, it was like the perfect timing for it, right? Like right before the pandemic, right before everyone seen this dark and gloomy world that we live in, but yet there's still hope that exists within there, which is kind of funny because it's where the camera perspective kind of comes from a little bit in terms of finding and taking your situation and the negatives in your life and kind of turning it on its ear and using it. So that's kind of like where this whole idea came from. So I think like it was perfect timing for that to come out. So where can people find those books for?
So they're all on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, or they can access them through my website. I'm at Allyson Aspey and AllysonAspey.com. So if you know how to spell my name, you can find me on any of the social medias or my website.
We'll put the link down there so everyone get a chance to make sure that they check.
Oh, wonderful.
Sure. There was I had a question. I just lost it for a second. But the publishing piece of it. Did you self-publish it, or did you go through a publishing company?
Yeah, so Dave Burgess Consulting published all but one of my books. They decided not to venture into the realistic fiction chapter book. So I have another publisher for that, but all the other books were published through DBC, which I'm so grateful for companies like DBC, especially, who elevate educator voices so that we can learn and grow together and inspire each other. So yeah, they're pretty incredible to work with.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to transition real quick, to Teachers Lounge, because we're going to keep this nice and short. So I'm going to be respectful of your time as well. So the Teachers Lounge is a segment that I have, and we have a little bit of fun. If you know anything about the Teachers Lounge, it's kind of time for the teachers to kind of unwind and not really talk about work, apparently, but they still do anyway. So
right.
Let's switch gears a little bit. So I have a music question for you. So here's the question for you. If music were to stop tomorrow, but you can bring in 3 artists that will rewrite the course of music, what 3 artists would you bring to rewrite the course of music going into the future?
Oh.
Tough one.
So I love Motown. I'm like, what? Stevie Wonder. My favorite song is, I'm like doubting myself now, but it's called Band of Gold by Frida Payne.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the Jackson 5. Going Back to Indiana is my favorite Jackson 5 song. So I think those, Signed, Sealed, Delivered, I'm Yours, is also one of my favorites. So I think those would be the artists I would choose. I love singing that to them and just dancing and having a good time. And I'm from Michigan, so Motown.
My brother's from Michigan as well, so I'm quite familiar with the state. So he lives there now. So I have to ask this question: Michigan or Ohio State? Or
what is that even a question?
Let me go back. Michigan or Michigan State. That's what.
There you go. There you go.
That's what I meant to say.
There you go. So it's Michigan State.
Oh,
Barton fan.
Barton fan. Sorry, John. He's a Wolverines fan. He lives in Ann Arbor, but
but now Georgia Bulldogs. Like I live in Georgia now. So
okay, the Bulldogs. Not bad, not bad, not bad at all. So Allyson, thank you for being on here. I do want to give you an opportunity to say one last thing to our educators out there, in words of wisdom, advice for the school year, or anything that you would like to share.
I appreciate what you said earlier too about one step at a time. Right now there are like so many initiatives, so many things we're supposed to teach with fidelity, so many things like adding self-care to our to-do list. Like, no, just one little step at a time. What's one little thing you can do tomorrow to move toward your own goals?
Mm-hmm.
And if you do that every day this year, remarkable things are going to happen. That's one. And then the other is just smile as much as possible and find joy. And if you have to abandon some curriculum to find some joy, do it, because everybody will be better for it.
Absolutely.
We need to have environments where students want to be and teachers want to be.
Absolutely.
I appreciate what you said earlier too about one step at a time. Right now there are like so many initiatives, so many things we're supposed to teach with fidelity, so many things like adding self-care to our to-do list. Like, no, just one little step at a time. What's one little thing you can do tomorrow to move toward your own goals?
Mm-hmm.
And if you do that every day this year, remarkable things are going to happen.
The message that I gave my staff when I'll leave my audience today is try every single day to be 1% better than you were yesterday. So, just the small things, whether it's smiling at somebody in the morning, opening the door. Like, I'm not a morning person. I can't stand it, but I'll go in there with a smile and then just make someone else feel good, because you never know what that person is going through. Some housekeeping things before we go out here. Audience, thanks for watching us. This is our ninth season, I believe it is right now. Coming up on one more, be 10. Allyson, again, thank you so much for being on our show. We definitely appreciate you and the work that you're doing. Keep up the good work and keep smiling and make people happy. Love it.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Until next time, everybody, stay in balance.